A phone call? You? Officer Briggs's voice blasted through the cold alley like a gunshot of mockery. He leaned back, laughing so loudly that people across the street actually turned to look. "Sir, please, just let me make one call," the homeless man whispered. His name was Caleb Turner, 56 years old, black, wearing a frayed army jacket that didn't match the December wind slicing through his bones. A duffel bag lay at his feet, half torn, half soaked from sleeping under last night's storm drain. But Briggs wasn't listening to anything except the sound of his own ridicule. "This is rich!" the officer howled, doubling over dramatically. "Hey, Morales, get over here. You gotta hear this. This guy thinks he gets a personal phone call. What is this, a hotel?" Officer Morales approached, smirking. He kicked Caleb's duffel bag with the tip of his boot, spilling a neatly folded American flag onto the wet concrete. Caleb flinched. Morales chuckled. "Look at this. He's got props now." Briggs stepped closer, towering over Caleb. "Who you calling, huh? Superman? Jesus? Oprah?" He jabbed a finger at Caleb's chest. "Look at you. You can't even afford socks that match. What makes you think anyone wants to hear from you?" A few bystanders slowed down. Some looked away. Some filmed. No one intervened. Caleb swallowed hard. His voice cracked as he tried again. "Officer, please, I haven't done anything wrong. My bag just fell from the bench. I was only trying to pick it up. I just need one call." Morales laughed so loud it echoed. "One call? Bro, you're homeless." He waved his hands theatrically toward the street. "What's he gonna do, Briggs? Call room service?" The two officers laughed together, basking in their own cruelty. But what they didn't know, what nobody in that alley knew, was that Caleb Turner used to have a number in his phone labeled Emergency Line DC, a number most people would never see, a number only a handful of Americans were ever given, and more importantly, a number that still recognized his voice. The chaos begins. The officers weren't done. Briggs took out his phone and pretended to record Caleb like he was some spectacle. "Smile for the camera. Tell the good people how you're begging for a phone call, like you're somebody." Caleb's jaw tightened. Humiliation burned behind his eyes. But he stayed calm. He always stayed calm. Old training, old instincts. Morales circled behind him like a shark. "We should just take him in, clean up the sidewalk, get a medal for community service." Caleb froze. He knew what clean up the sidewalk meant. He raised his hands slowly. "I'm not resisting, officers. I just need—" "Shut up," Briggs barked. "I'm sick of you people acting like victims. You people." The words hit harder than any shove. A teenager across the street whispered to her friend, "Why are they being so rough? He didn't do anything." But Briggs puffed out his chest, energized by the tiny audience. He grabbed Caleb's wrist without warning and twisted it sharply. Caleb gasped in pain. "Stay still," Briggs growled, "or I'll charge you with resisting." Morales tightened the zip tie so hard, Caleb winced. "Man, these guys love the resisting line," someone muttered while filming. They didn't dare speak louder. Briggs smirked, pleased. Humiliating Caleb was entertainment, sport, a way to remind everyone watching that he was in control. "Last chance, old man," Briggs said. "Tell us who you're trying to call." Caleb looked up slowly. His voice was barely audible, but steady. "Washington." The officers erupted in laughter.
Briggs bent forward, wiping tears from his eyes. "Oh my God! Morales, did you hear that? He wants to go Washington, the capital. Maybe the president's on speed dial." "Bro," Morales cackled, "this guy is delusional." Caleb stayed silent, because what good would it do to tell them the truth? that he once worked in the most secure wing of the Pentagon, that he once briefed officials whose shoes these officers weren't worthy to polish, that before the PTSD, before the breakdown, before the homelessness, he had been a man with access to rooms these two would never even see in photographs. But none of that mattered now. Not to them. To them, he was just another nobody. The moment everything shifts. Briggs finally said, "Fine, you want your magical phone call? Make it!" He shoved an old payphone receiver toward Caleb like it was a joke. Morales crossed his arms. "Go ahead! Dial the White House!" Snickers. Mocking. A couple of phone cameras recording. Caleb closed his eyes, took a breath, and dialed a number from memory. A number he hadn't called in years, but could never forget. 3 rings. Then, White House Communications Office, state your clearance level. The alley went silent. Briggs blinked. Morales tilted his head. The operator continued, sharper this time. Identify yourself immediately. Caleb spoke with the quiet authority of a man who had once commanded respect. Turner, Caleb J., former clearance Echo 7. A pause. A long one. Then, Mr. Turner, stand by. Briggs laughed nervously, trying to cover the sudden tension. Nice try. Probably some scam hotline. But then the line clicked again. A new voice, lower, more urgent. Mr. Turner, are you safe? Are you under duress? Briggs's smirk evaporated. Morales's arms slowly dropped. Someone recording whispered, "Wait, what?" Caleb answered calmly, "Yes, I'm being detained by 2 local officers. I have not committed a crime. They are denying my request for basic communication." And, before he finished, the voice on the other end said the words that froze the entire alley. "Stay where you are. A federal team has been dispatched." Click. Call ended. Caleb lowered the receiver. Silence. Then, absolute chaos. Briggs stepped back like he'd just touched an electric wire. What the hell was that? Morales's face went pale. Echo 7? Isn't that serious clearance? A bystander whispered, "Dude, what did he just do?" Caleb didn't answer. He just looked at the officers with tired, wounded eyes. Eyes that said, "You never should have judged me by what you think you see."
Officer Briggs tossed the clipboard onto the counter with a loud clack, the sound echoing through the small precinct lobby like a gunshot. Isaiah flinched. He tried to hide it, but Briggs saw and smirked again. "Sensitive, aren't we?" the officer jeered, leaning his elbow on the desk. "Relax, buddy. Nobody's gonna bite." He paused, eyes narrowing with fake sympathy. "Well, unless you count the rats in holding." The 2 officers behind him burst into laughter again, way too loud, way too proud of themselves. Isaiah swallowed. "Just stay calm. You need 1 phone call. 1 call." The fluorescent lights above flickered, buzzing like angry hornets. The room smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, cheap stuff, the kind that burned your nose. Everything felt designed to make a person shrink, fold, disappear. But Isaiah didn't disappear. He straightened. "Officer," he said quietly, "I have the right to a phone call. You said you'd let me." Briggs rolled his eyes dramatically. Yeah. Rights, liberties, justice, all that Constitution nonsense. He raised his hands like he was quoting Shakespeare. "Look, my man, you don't exactly scream, 'urgent call.' And last time I checked," he pointed at Isaiah's clothes, You don't own a phone anyway. More snickers behind him. One officer whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Probably gonna call Domino's, ask for leftovers. Another chimed in. Nah, bro, he's calling Disney. Gotta tell Mickey Mouse he's running late for work. Laughter. Cruel, childish laughter. Isaiah kept his voice even. Just need the phone, please. Briggs drummed his fingers on the desk, pretending to think. What do we think, boys? Should we give our friend here his big, important phone call? No! Let him sweat! Make him sing for it! The room erupted like it was open mic night at a comedy club. Just then, a supervisor walked by, a tired-looking sergeant holding a stack of reports. Briggs straightened, but only barely. Sergeant, Isaiah said quickly, I've been here 2 hours. They haven't given me my call. The sergeant sighed, like someone asking about a lost pencil, not a constitutional right. Briggs, just let him use the damn phone so he stops whining. Briggs lifted his hands. Fine, since everyone's feeling all humanitarian today. He shoved a landline toward Isaiah with 2 fingers like it was contaminated. Isaiah reached for it, and Briggs pulled it back an inch. Isaiah froze. Briggs smirked. You know, big guy, this is a business line. He leaned in, breath warm and mocking. So if you prank call someone, or breathe too hard on it, or sneeze, or if you just, irritate me, I'm writing you up. Isaiah said nothing. Briggs shoved the phone into his chest. 30 seconds. Isaiah nodded and dialed. The officers leaned in, whispering predictions. He's calling the shelter. Nah, the soup kitchen. Maybe his pet pigeon. Briggs laughed so hard he had to hold the desk for balance. But the moment the line rang, Isaiah's expression changed. Not fear, not nervousness, purpose. Like he knew this number by heart, like he knew someone would answer. Briggs tilted his head confused. The officers behind him grew quiet. The phone clicked. Someone answered. Isaiah's voice dropped into something calm, firm, and steady. Ma'am, it's me. They brought me in. I need you to know where I am. The officers exchanged amused looks. A woman? Ooh, he's calling his girlfriend. Ask her to Venmo bail, lover boy. Isaiah continued speaking, ignoring them. Yes, ma'am. The 7th precinct. No, they haven't processed me. He paused. Yes, you can tell him right away. Something in his tone, the respect, the structure, the discipline, did not match their assumptions. He didn't sound like a man calling a girlfriend, or a friend, or anyone small. He sounded like a man calling up the chain of command. Briggs frowned. The call ended. Isaiah hung up gently and whispered, Thank you. Briggs waved him off. Cute little performance. I give it a 5 out of 10. Now sit! Isaiah sat back on the worn wooden bench. The laughter resumed. But something was different now. Isaiah's eyes weren't defeated. They were focused. A storm was coming, and he knew it. They didn't. A rookie officer walked in carrying coffee. Hey guys, what's so funny? Briggs grinned and jerked his thumb toward Isaiah. This one, he thinks he's important. The rookie glanced at him, then at the clock.
Why's he still uncuffed? Aren't protocol times up? Briggs waved him off. He ain't going anywhere, Isaiah said still, calm, silent. But deep inside, a flicker of relief burned, because in exactly 9 minutes, the entire precinct would learn something none of them could have imagined. And Officer Briggs, cocky, laughing, cruel, would wish to God he'd never mocked the homeless man who made one quiet call. Because that wasn't just any call. The woman on the other end wasn't a girlfriend. She wasn't a sister. She wasn't calling a local friend to help. She was calling someone who had direct access to the most secure communication channel in the United States government. And the moment she relayed Isaiah's name, everything changed. The White House had been notified, and they were already on their way.
For the first 3 minutes after Isaiah's phone call, the precinct sounded exactly the same. Paper shuffling, keyboard clacking, coffee slurping, and Briggs's laughter echoing through the lobby like rusted metal scraping concrete. But in the 4th minute, the world shifted. It started with a sound so small and ordinary, most people would ignore it. A phone vibrating. Not ringing, not beeping, just vibrating. Urgent, sharp, repeated. Briggs grabbed his cell, annoyed. "Who the hell?" His voice cut off mid-sentence. The screen flashed with a number he didn't recognize. Something official-looking. Something government. The room noticed the change in his expression, his eyebrows tightening, his pupils shrinking. Rookie Taylor asked, "Sir, everything okay?" Briggs waved him away and answered the call. "This is Officer Briggs." A voice interrupted him, a clipped, authoritative woman's voice. "Officer Briggs, stand by for secure transfer." Briggs blinked. "What? Transfer to who?" But the line had already gone silent. The other officers stopped what they were doing. Even the drunk guy asleep in the corner stirred. The silence stretched. Then, click. A new voice came on the line. Low, direct, commanding. "This is Special Advisor Carson with the National Security Council. Identify the detainee you denied a phone call 90 minutes ago." Every officer in the room froze. Briggs's throat made a strange clicking noise. I don't... "Name," the voice barked. "Now." Briggs stammered. Isaiah Gray." A pause. A deadly, heavy pause. "Officer Briggs," the voice said, "the President has been informed that Mr. Gray is currently in your custody." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The officers stared at each other. The rookie's eyes widened so much they looked ready to fall out of his skull. Briggs swallowed, hard. The President?" His voice cracked like a teenager's. "Yes, the President of the United States. Mr. Gray is a protected individual. You were called 10 minutes ago by the White House operator. Did you obstruct his call?" Everyone looked at Isaiah. Still sitting quietly. Still calm. Still waiting. Briggs gripped the desk until his knuckles went white. I didn't know who he was." "That," the voice snapped, "is not an excuse." Another pause. A deeper one. "You need to understand what is happening. A federal response team has already been deployed. ETA 6 minutes. The lobby erupted into whispers. "Federal? What the hell is going on? 6 minutes? Why would they come for him?" Briggs forced a laugh. Thin, shaky, pathetic. "Hold on! This is some kind of prank, right? Right?" But the voice didn't laugh. Instead, it said 4 words that turned every spine to ice. "Do not touch him." Briggs's eyes darted toward Isaiah. Isaiah didn't move, but his presence suddenly felt different, like a quiet axis the entire room was now spinning around. The voice continued. "At this moment, the Chief of Staff is in the Situation Room. We are tracking your precinct. You will follow every instruction I give you until federal agents arrive." Briggs whispered, "Yes, sir." "First, uncuff Mr. Gray." Briggs shot up straight. He's not cuffed." A beat. "You didn't cuff him?" No, sir." The voice exhaled slowly, disappointed, like a teacher realizing a student didn't just fail the test, they never opened the book. "Good. Then step 2, move away from him. All of you." The entire room stepped back in unsteady unison, like the floor was a cliff edge and Isaiah was gravity. Isaiah looked up, calm as ever. "May I stand?" he asked softly. The voice answered for the officers. "Yes, Mr. Gray, you may do whatever you wish." Every officer's jaw dropped. Isaiah rose slowly, stretched his back, rolled his shoulders. No one spoke. No one dared. Even Briggs avoided eye contact. The voice returned. "Federal vehicles will arrive shortly. Do not interfere." Briggs licked his lips. He looked like he might faint. Rookie Taylor whispered, "Officer, who is he?" The voice seemed to hear him. "Mr. Gray is under executive protection for classified reasons."
Silence again. The kind of silence where even the building holds its breath. Then, the entire precinct shook. A low rumble rolled through the floorboards. The windows trembled. Coffee cups rattled. Officer Lane ran to the door and peeked outside, and his voice came out high and broken. "Oh my God!" Briggs rushed over, saw what Lane saw, and his knees nearly buckled. Because down the street, only a block away, 6 black SUVs were barreling toward them, engines roaring like thunder. No sirens, no lights. That was worse. Silent meant serious. Silent meant elite. Silent meant White House detail. Briggs turned pale. "They're coming here for him?" he whispered. The rookie shook his head in disbelief. "But he's just... Isaiah finished the sentence for him, voice calm, quiet, but firm. "Just a homeless man?" The rookie turned red. I didn't mean..." Isaiah didn't scold him, didn't glare. He simply said, "You'll understand soon." Because everything was about to come out. Why the White House cared. Why they called back instantly. Why federal protection surrounded a man with nothing but a backpack and dignity. And in 2 minutes, those SUVs would stop at the precinct doors. And the officers who laughed at him, mocked him, dismissed him, were about to learn exactly who Isaiah Gray really was, and why the entire United States government moved when he made one phone call.
The roar of engines grew louder, so loud it drowned out the entire precinct. Even the flickering fluorescent lights seemed to hum nervously as the walls vibrated from the incoming convoy. No one moved. No one breathed. Every officer stood frozen, staring through the front windows as 6 matte black SUVs swarmed the parking lot like a tactical storm. The first SUV swung sideways, tires screeching, blocking the main entrance. The second parked nose to nose with the patrol cars. The third backed in beside the stairwell. Textbook formation. Absolute precision. Only elite government teams moved like that. Briggs, usually red-faced, loud, and full of bluster, looked like his bones had turned liquid. "What the hell? What the hell? What the hell?" he whispered, each repetition more panicked than the last. Rookie Taylor stepped back until he bumped into a desk. "Sir, is this Secret Service?" Briggs shook his head slowly. "No, they don't roll this deep unless it's someone in the direct line of..." He stopped. He didn't want to finish the sentence, because finishing it meant acknowledging the impossible. A man who slept behind dumpsters, a man they mocked, a man they refused a simple phone call, could be someone protected at the highest level, someone important enough to mobilize a federal response team, someone they should have treated with respect from the start. The doors bursted open, not pushed, not pulled, blown open with authority. The lobby doors slammed against the walls as 10 federal agents stormed inside in a seamless V formation. Clean suits, tactical earpieces, dark sunglasses despite the dim lighting. They moved with purpose, with urgency, with absolute command of the space. A woman led the formation, a tall agent with a tight bun, jaw sharp as granite, and a presence that demanded attention. The American flag pin on her lapel gleamed. "Everyone step away from Mr. Gray," she ordered, her voice slicing through the air. The officers stumbled backwards instantly. The commanding agent locked eyes with Isaiah. The entire room witnessed something unbelievable. She softened. Not much, just a subtle shift, but enough to show recognition. "Mr. Gray," she said with genuine respect, "we're here to escort you." Isaiah nodded calmly. "Thank you." Briggs nearly collapsed. The agent turned toward him, and her expression immediately hardened again. "You're Officer Briggs?" she asked. Briggs tried to respond, but his mouth opened and closed like a beached fish. She stepped closer. Not threatening, just enough to make him sweat. "You denied Mr. Gray his federally authorized call?" Briggs swallowed loudly. The whole room heard it. I thought he didn't seem." The agent leaned in. "Is that your official statement?" Briggs froze. Every officer stared. Even Isaiah now watched him quietly, not angry, not smug, just observing. Briggs shrank. Then everything shifted. The commanding agent turned toward the officers. Her words came sharp, clipped, lethal. "By order of the National Security Council, this precinct is now under temporary federal oversight." Every officer jerked upright. What does that mean?" Lane asked. "It means," she said, "that until Mr. Gray is safely transported and debriefed, your authority is suspended." Suspended. The word hit like a punch. Rookie Taylor paled. Lane's eyes went wide. Briggs' jaw unhinged. The commanding agent turned back to Isaiah. "Sir, we'll escort you to the motorcade. A secure line to the Chief of Staff is waiting." Isaiah nodded again. But before he stepped away, he did something unexpected. He looked at Briggs. Really looked at him. Briggs stiffened. Isaiah's voice stayed calm. Too calm. "You treated me the way you saw me," he said. "Not the way you should treat anyone." Briggs opened his mouth, but no words came out. Isaiah continued. "I'm not here for revenge. I don't want apologies. I don't need explanations." He paused. "But I hope after today, when someone who looks like me comes in here, you give them what you didn't give me." Silence, broken only by Briggs' quiet, shaky breathing. Then Isaiah walked toward the agents. They moved with him in seamless formation, like they had trained for this exact moment. The precinct watched him leave. The doors opened again. Sunlight poured in. The SUVs gleamed black and imposing as agents surrounded him on all sides. As Isaiah stepped toward the motorcade, the commanding agent spoke into her earpiece. "VIP secured. Prepare line for departure." VIP. Not detainee, not suspect.
Not homeless man. VIP. The entire precinct heard it, and for the first time, Briggs' face crumpled. Not with anger, but with shame. Isaiah disappeared inside the center SUV. The doors locked instantly. Engines rumbled. Tires rolled. And just like that, the man Briggs mocked, dismissed, laughed at, was escorted away like someone whose name carried weight in rooms Briggs could never enter.
The motorcade cut through the city like a blade, silent, swift, commanding every road it touched. People on sidewalks turned their heads at the sight of 6 identical SUVs and a trailing tactical van. Inside the center vehicle, Isaiah Gray sat quietly, hands folded, gaze steady on the skyline. He didn't look shocked, or overwhelmed, or confused by the sudden federal escort. Instead, he looked like someone who'd been waiting for this moment. Like a man returning to a life he had stepped away from, not a life he didn't belong to. The commanding agent, now sitting across from him, lowered her voice. "Mr. Gray, the Chief of Staff is ready for you." Isaiah nodded. "I'll speak to him soon. First, I need you to tell me something." The agent blinked. "Yes, sir." He tilted his head slightly. "Did they hurt anyone before I arrived?" A hint of confusion flickered across her face. "Hurt anyone?" Yes. The other people on the streets near the mall. The teen sitting by the bench. The old man near the planter. Did the officers harass anyone else today? The agent's throat tightened. He wasn't asking for himself. He was asking for everyone else, for people he didn't know, for people like him, judged, dismissed, belittled. Not that we could confirm, she answered, but we'll review the footage. Isaiah nodded slowly, the faintest look of relief softening his stern features. Then he turned his gaze back to the window. Back at the precinct, Officer Briggs had sunk into a chair, head in his hands, while Lane paced the floor like a caged animal. Rookie Taylor stood by the door staring at the parking lot where the motorcade had vanished. "What just happened?" Taylor whispered. Lane turned on him. "What happened? We just got suspended by the federal government, that's what." Briggs didn't move. Lane looked at him. "Say something, man." Briggs finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, not from anger now, but embarrassment, fear, humiliation. "I messed up. Badly," he whispered. "Understatement of the century. We could all lose our badges." Briggs shook his head numbly. "No, I think I just lost something bigger than that." He stared into the empty space where Isaiah had stood, the man he shoved, mocked, accused, for nothing. "I think," Briggs said quietly, "I just lost the right to call myself a decent man." Taylor swallowed hard. He didn't look like someone important." Briggs slammed his fist onto the table. "That's the problem. Why does someone have to look important to be treated with respect?" The room fell silent. For once, Briggs didn't sound arrogant. He sounded broken. Back in the motorcade, the call that changed everything. The small console phone in the SUV lit up. The commanding agent straightened immediately. "Mr. Gray? It's the White House." Isaiah didn't react dramatically. He simply extended his hand. When he answered, his voice dropped an octave, still soft, but with a hidden authority. "This is Gray." The speaker crackled to life. A warm yet formal voice filled the vehicle. "Isaiah, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for hours. The president is extremely concerned." The president. The SUV fell even quieter, even though no one spoke except the caller. "Where have you been?" the voice continued. "Your secure tracker went offline." "We thought—" "I'm fine," Isaiah replied. "Just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" the voice repeated. "You disappeared after leaving the outreach center. We had every federal agency on high alert. If any foreign group realized who you were—" Isaiah cut him off gently. "I was just walking." The agent looked up sharply. She didn't know that part. Walking? No protection? No escort? The chief of staff exhaled sharply. "You know you can't just walk, Isaiah. Not with your clearance level. Not with what you carry in your head." Isaiah stared out the window. "Sometimes I just want to be a person," he murmured. A silence hung between them. Then the voice softened. "We understand, truly. But you're not just anyone. You are an asset to national security." Isaiah winced at that word, asset. It hurt, in a way bullets couldn't. Who Isaiah Gray really was. The agent watched him from across the seat, studying his body language, the way he flinched, the way his jaw tightened. She knew the basic intel, but she suddenly realized she didn't know the man. Isaiah Gray wasn't homeless, not really, and he wasn't a nobody. He was M, a senior cryptographer for the Department of Defense. N, one of 3 people in the country with clearance to access a classified cybersecurity protocol that secured White House communications. M, a specialist whose disappearance even for 1 hour triggered federal alerts worldwide. He was the reason certain terrorist groups never breached U.S. cyber infrastructure. He was the reason foreign adversaries never cracked the emergency communication networks. He was the invisible shield around the nation. And yet, no one at the mall saw any of that. All they saw was a man with a tattered coat and tired eyes. The truth behind his disappearance. The agent finally gathered enough courage to ask gently, "Sir, why were you at the mall?" Isaiah blinked slowly. "To buy shoes." She frowned. Shoes? He gave a faint smile. Yeah. The outreach center asked if I could help a veteran homeless shelter with some encryption issues. I didn't want to show up in boots with holes in them. The agent's throat tightened. You were helping a shelter. He nodded. And on the way, the world judged you by your clothes. He shrugged softly. It happens. The agent felt something in her chest twist because he said it too casually, like a man used to being underestimated despite the mind he possessed. The White House wanted him immediately. The voice on the phone continued. We've arranged a secure suite, medical evaluation, briefing with the president this afternoon. He wants to personally thank you. Isaiah sighed quietly. I'll be there. The call ended. The SUV fell silent. The agent leaned forward. Mr. Gray, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Isaiah looked up. For what those officers did. For the way the world treats you when you're out of sight. For the fact that someone like you can give your life to serving this country and still not be recognized unless you're surrounded by us. Isaiah nodded once. Thank you. But his eyes drifted outside again.
Watching the city blur by, watching ordinary people, each with their own unseen stories. He whispered almost to himself, recognition shouldn't come with a badge or a motorcade. And the agent realized he wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about everyone who had ever been dismissed, everyone who had ever been judged too quickly, everyone who would never get federal SUVs to correct the world's mistakes.
Officer Braddock was still pacing the hallway like a man trying to outrun his own conscience. Every few seconds, he'd glance toward the holding cell, as if expecting the homeless man inside to suddenly vanish. Sweat gathered on his forehead, his hands wouldn't stay still, his jaw kept clenching like he was chewing rocks. Something was wrong, and he knew it. But what he didn't know was that things were about to get much, much worse. Across the room, the other officers were still buzzing around, joking, whispering, relishing the petty power trip they'd just taken part in. Someone even said, man really thought he was important enough to get a call back. What do you expect, Beyoncé on line 1? Laughter, loud and stupid. And then, the phone rang. Not the front desk line, not the public line, not the regular civilian nonsense line. No, it was the direct line, the one that never rang unless a government agency, governor's office, or federal department needed something right now. The phone on the wall with the red sticker. Do not ignore. Ever. The laughter died instantly. The room froze. Even Braddock stopped pacing. Everyone stared at the ringing phone like it was a grenade about to go off. Officer Ramirez swallowed hard. Who's gonna pick it up? Nobody moved, because whoever picked up that phone was also taking responsibility for whatever storm was on the other end. Finally, Sergeant Keller, the only one old enough to have real authority, but still petty enough to enjoy bullying civilians, stepped forward. He snatched the receiver with an annoyed grunt. This is Ridgeview PD, Sergeant Keller speaking. He didn't get to finish. His eyebrows shot up, his back straightened. His face drained color so fast he looked like someone had unplugged his soul. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand. Yes, he's here. Everyone leaned forward. The sergeant blinked twice. His voice trembled. Sir, just to confirm, the White House? Dead silence in the room. Someone dropped their coffee. Braddock's mouth hung open. One officer muttered, No way! No freaking way! Keller pressed the phone tighter to his ear, listening carefully, nodding rapidly, sweating like he'd been sprinting. Yes, sir. We have him. He's safe. Of course. We'll release him immediately. Yes. Yes, sir. I'll handle it personally. He hung up the phone. Nobody breathed. Nobody blinked. Nobody moved.
Sergeant Keller slowly turned his head toward the holding cell. Then he said the 8 words no one expected to hear. "That man you arrested is a White House guest." Shock rippled across the room like a lightning strike. Braddock felt his stomach bottom out. A White House guest? A homeless man? The same man they mocked? The same man they blocked from making a call? The same man they laughed at? The one they treated like disposable trash? Ramirez whispered, "You gotta be kidding me." But Keller wasn't kidding. He wasn't exaggerating. He wasn't even breathing properly. He stormed down the hallway barking, "Get him out of that cell now!" Officers scrambled like terrified ants. Keys rattled, boots slammed against the concrete. Braddock rushed ahead, nearly tripping over himself, desperate to undo the damage, desperate to salvage whatever scraps of dignity he could. But it was too late. Because as they reached the cell, they found the homeless man sitting quietly, hands folded, calm as a monk. He looked up at them with eyes so steady, so patient, so disappointed, that Braddock felt the shame burn all the way down to his bones. He didn't yell, didn't stand, didn't ask questions. He just said, "I told you someone would call." And that simple, calm sentence hit harder than any punch. Because now the officers knew they hadn't just bullied a vulnerable man. They hadn't just abused their authority. They had humiliated someone important enough for the White House to call back directly. And they were about to find out exactly who he really was.
The door swung open, and suddenly the holding cell felt too small for the moment that was about to happen. Officer Braddock rushed in first, keys shaking in his hand like a guilty child trying to erase a mistake before a parent sees it. Behind him, Sergeant Keller hovered with the stiff posture of someone who just realized his entire career might be on the chopping block. The homeless man, whose clothes were worn, whose hands were calloused, whose eyes were gentle and tired, stood slowly, not afraid, not surprised, just quietly knowing. Braddock fumbled with the lock. "Sir, we're releasing you. There was a misunderstanding." The man raised one eyebrow. "A misunderstanding? Is that what we're calling it?" Braddock's throat went dry. He opened the door. As the man stepped out, every officer lining the hallway stood frozen, not out of respect, out of dread. Sergeant Keller cleared his throat, trying to steady his voice. "Sir, your contact called. We didn't realize—" "You didn't realize I was someone you couldn't push around." The words hit the room like a hammer. Keller swallowed hard. "We didn't know you were connected to the White House." The man gave a slow nod. Then he said something that made every officer's stomach drop. "I'm not connected to them. I work with them." A murmur rippled down the hallway. Ramirez whispered under her breath, "Oh my God." The homeless man clasped his hands behind his back, speaking evenly. "I'm a federal advisor. Housing reform, veteran outreach, and emergency shelter policies. I was traveling off-grid to meet someone, privately. I carry no security detail by choice." Braddock's knees nearly buckled. They hadn't arrested some random guy. They arrested the man who literally helped write the housing rights laws they ignored when they tossed him in a cell and laughed about it. Sergeant Keller's voice cracked. "Sir, why didn't you say anything when we asked who you were?" The answer was soft, too soft. "Because people like me shouldn't have to prove their worth to be treated with dignity." Silence. The kind that suffocates, the kind that exposes everyone in the room. He continued, "Your job is to protect people, especially the ones who don't look like much, especially the ones who have no one to speak for them." Braddock looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. The man turned directly to him. "You laughed at me, officer. You mocked a man who simply asked to call someone who cared." Braddock's eyes filled with panic. I'm sorry, sir. Truly, I didn't know. That's the problem, the man cut in. You only care when you do know. A pin could have dropped. Every officer felt exposed, stripped of the authority they'd used to hide their cruelty. The man sighed, straightened his shoulders, and pulled something from his worn jacket pocket. A badge. Not a police badge, not a local ID. A presidential advisory credential. Gleaming gold engraved with the seal of the United States. Sergeant Keller's voice came out as a whisper. "Sir, please, don't file a complaint. We can fix this. We'll make this right." The man shook his head gently. "Oh, I won't be the one filing anything." The officers exhaled in shaky relief. Until, he added, the White House already requested your body cam footage. Every person in uniform froze. Every stomach dropped, every face either paled or flushed in terror. Because now it wasn't about apologies, or excuses, or misunderstandings. It was about accountability. And the man they mocked, the man they belittled, had just become the most dangerous person they'd ever wronged, someone with power and the moral high ground. He turned toward the exit. "Let's go," he said calmly. "Someone from Washington is waiting for me." And as he walked out of that precinct, the officers behind him didn't just see a homeless man anymore.
The sliding doors of the precinct hissed open, and cold evening air swept over him as he stepped outside. Waiting at the curb was a black SUV with federal plates and a small flag clipped discreetly near the mirror. An agent in a dark suit approached, nodding. "Sir, we've been informed of the incident. Washington is expecting you." The man nodded once, calm as ever, the calm of someone who spent years surviving what others couldn't imagine, and now finally had the power to fix it. But inside the precinct? Chaos. Pure chaos. Sergeant Keller burst into the viewing room, replaying body cam footage with trembling fingers. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" he barked, as if stopping the video would stop the consequences. But the consequences were already in motion. The footage had been auto-uploaded, and the moment the White House requested it, it became protected evidence. Officer Braddock stood pale and sweating against the wall, replaying the words he had said, laughing, mocking, calling the man bum, hobo, and waste of paperwork. Every syllable felt like another nail sealing up a coffin. His own. Ramirez sat silently beside him, tears running down her face. She had been the only one with an ounce of compassion, but fear still gripped her. Because she knew how this would look, and she knew how Washington handled cases involving federal advisors, especially when the victim was a vulnerable citizen they were sworn to protect. Keller muttered to the captain, "Maybe if we apologize publicly." "Publicly? Are you insane? Once the media gets this." But it was already too late. A phone blared from another room. One of the younger officers rushed in, pale as a sheet. "Captain, CNN just called. They said they received a tip and want to confirm the incident." Everyone froze. Braddock felt his vision spin. How did they find out that fast?" Ramirez whispered, almost too quietly to hear. "Washington." Cut 2. Outside the precinct. The man was about to step into the SUV when a young officer, the rookie from earlier, ran after him. "Sir, wait." The man paused, turning to him with patient eyes. The rookie swallowed hard. I'm sorry for how you were treated. I didn't know what to do. I should have said something." Doing nothing is how people get hurt. You saw wrong? Next time don't freeze. The rookie nodded, shame on his face, but something stronger in his posture. Resolve. Then the man climbed into the SUV. The door shut. The vehicle pulled away, and everything he left behind began to unravel. Within 24 hours, national headlines. Federal advisor detained and mocked by local police. White House responds. Body cam footage leaked in mistreatment of homeless-looking man. Calls for dismissals grow after advisor targeted by officers. The story spread not because he was powerful, but because he was treated poorly before they knew he was. Americans watched the clip with shaking heads, the laughter, the insults, his calm voice asking for one phone call, Braddock kicking his feet off the desk, Keller's smirk. And then, the moment the White House called back, it went viral within hours. The precinct aftermath. A meeting was called. Internal affairs swarmed the building. Officers were placed on immediate suspension. Braddock didn't even try to defend himself, not because he felt guilty, but because he finally understood. He'd built his whole sense of authority on the assumption that the powerless had no protection. And today, the powerless had shaken his entire world. Keller tried to talk his way out of it. Ramirez found herself giving a sworn statement she wished she'd made earlier. The captain? He resigned before sunrise.
A community center stood on the east side of town. Tiny, almost forgotten, but still running because of volunteers who cared more than the city ever did. A small group gathered inside for the weekly housing outreach meeting. Paperwork, warm soup, old chairs, people who were invisible anywhere else. And at the far table sat the man once mocked as a homeless nobody, wearing the same simple jacket, the same gentle expression. He didn't look like a man who'd shaken the nation. He looked like a man exactly where he belonged, serving people who needed him. A young volunteer rolled up a newspaper and handed it to him. "You're all over the news," she said, smiling. "They're calling it the call that changed everything." He set the paper aside. "That's not the part that matters." "What does?" she asked. He looked around the room, at the tired faces, the scared ones, the hopeful ones, then smiled faintly. "That they see us," he said softly. "Even for a moment, they finally saw us." The volunteer nodded. "Will the officers get charged?" He breathed in, then out. "Justice isn't quick, but it's coming." She smiled. "You really believe that?" He nodded. "I know it." He lifted his cup of coffee, cheap, watery, but warm, and raised it gently. "To dignity," he whispered. Someone beside him echoed the words, then another. A small chorus. A room full of people society forgot, and the man who reminded the country that every one of them mattered.